Hey guys, it's Leo K. I went to FanExpo yesterday to play some of AC Origins. I also got some cool thumb grip covers from the guys running the booth, took some nice pictures of myself, and I ended up buying two graphic novels that are basically about the Mad Hatter if he was a rogue and had a hidden blade. Insane. Anyway, on to the good stuff. The build I played was the E3 Fayum demo. They did not let me pull footage from it, so I'll be using footage I'm finding around the internet to talk over. The reason they let people at Gamescom pull footage from the Memphis build is that the Memphis build is at least 3 months newer than the E3 build, and much more stable and polished. UB Marketing is fine with giving the internet totally player-dictated footage of the Memphis build, but not so much the Fayum build because it's very, very alpha and still a little unstable. At least that's what the dev there said, but with that in mind, I personally encountered zero bugs and zero moments of frustration during my time with it. I got to play roughly 20 minutes, most of which I spent in stealth. I deliberately did as little of everything else as I could because we don't have much detail on stealth and we know a lot about combat. I tested fast travel from the world map to a viewpoint, but I didn't remember to test fast travel from Sano. I'm not sure if that was even a feature they had enabled at that point. It is something that we can do in the final game though. So, stealth is really, really fun. I loved it. The easiest way for me to describe it is it's like Metal Gear Solid 5 with freeform and fluid parkour. It really does feel like that, and I'm very happy with it. Crouching doesn't prevent Bayek from doing any other actions. You can still climb and crouch, and you will not have to re-crouch after stopping your parkour. The game remembers what state Bayek was in with regards to crouch or stand, and it keeps that consistent across all of your actions. That's something I actually noticed about this game that the previous ACs did not have. In Origins, Bayek will never do something that you don't tell him to. It was actually a little weird at the beginning, but once you got used to it, it's fantastic. In my experience, he doesn't even pull out his weapons for combat unless you do it yourself, which gives us an immense amount of control, contrasted with previous games. There is still cover, but it's not like Unity where it's a hard snap, and it's not like Syndicate where it'll jerk you into place when you walk near it. It's like The Last of Us, where there's no real indication that you're in cover, but as long as you're near a corner, the game will let you do cover kills with a unique animation on guards that are actually pretty far away. I had a moment where I did that to a guard walking toward my cover, stabbing him and pulling him into hiding, while another guard in the far distance was very slowly starting to detect me. I then flipped over a nearby ledge and waited for the guard to investigate, and then when he came I ledge assassinated him. It was pretty cool. Hitting walls and floors with arrows or your melee weapon does make noise and it does arouse suspicion, so you can use that to your advantage or it can become a mistake that you have to adapt out of. I did test whether our fire arrows can light bushes and stuff on fire, and the answer was no, they do not. I don't mind that so much. Having immense fire propagation tech in this game would have been pretty tough to do, and it didn't take anything away from the gameplay that I got to try. One other interesting thing about arrows, and I don't know if I wrote about this later in the script, but I feel like bringing it up right now. Another interesting thing about arrows is it feels like they have ballistics. And what I mean is gravity acts on our projectiles now, because there was a guard who climbed up into a tower and I tried to headshot him from the ground, and even though my crosshair was right on his head and I had a fully drawn bow and I released, like I loosed the arrow, it did not kill him. The arrow just hit somewhere on the tower below him. He got suspicious. He was like, huh, what was that? And I was like, did Bayek just not hit where I wanted him to, or is gravity and ballistics actually like acting on my projectile? And I really do believe that ballistics are a thing in this game, which means we can now Jesus shot in AC Origins, which is fucking awesome. Whistling is back. It works the same way as before, as far as I'm aware. I used it to call one guard toward my tall grass, which also wrapped around the back of a hut, and as the guard approached me, leaving his ally, I moved through the tall grass toward his abandoned friend and stabbed him, stabbed the commander of the outpost, and then finally stabbed the first guard I'd distracted at the beginning of my stealth combo. It was really cool stuff, and I also did this live for a line that was watching me, which felt pretty damn incredible. Stealth feels very good to use. You can tell that it's an evolution of Black Flag system, but overhauled to the max, with a crouch button and more robust marking system for tracking hostiles. The detection meter is obviously different, but we knew that already. It feels like Far Cry's detection meter, but much more crisp, much cleaner, and less ambiguous. It fills with white, then when it's all the way full, goes to yellow, and a guard will yell a warning, and then almost a split second after yellow, it'll just go right to red, and you've been detected. The switch over from yellow to red is very unforgiving and very fast. I think that this might be affected by stealth gear later in the game, so you can fudge and alter the detection rate, but I couldn't do that because my demo was very short. I enjoy the detection sound. I actually didn't like the old school game's detection ding, but I really love Origins. You can meditate using a skill and swap from day to night at will whenever you want, wherever you want. This will alter guard layouts and guard behaviors according to what's been written in those particular NPC sections of the schedule system. So I used this. I meditated until it was night, and then I stealth assassinated sleeping guards with the hidden blade in my bow, sneaking into their tents. It's one of the first times in the series I felt almost disturbed by my own lethality. The fact that I could creep into these areas and take the life of completely defenseless soldiers was a very powerful mixture of emotions. In retrospect, I thought it was cool that Origins could provoke such feelings in me when previous AC games generally leave me feeling cold or nothing at all when I stab people. So Parkour was the next biggest thing I really tried to get some data on, and what it feels like to me is AC1 to Revelations Parkour placed in Unity's engine. My experience with it is that I had much more control and much more ability to play intentionally within 20 minutes of picking up the controller in Origins than I ever had after hundreds of hours of gameplay in Unity and Syndicate. This is amazing news. We can manually side eject again now. I'm pretty sure that's what I ended up doing a few times, and Bayek doesn't need to agree with the player in order to perform actions anymore. He'll just do them, and it's up to you to accept the consequences of that. He's not like Arno, Jacob, Evie, or Lydia, where, they have to agree with what you're doing before they will allow the character to do it. No, like, you just press buttons and stuff happens. It's good. You have a lot of control. I flung myself off of various buildings and ended up paying for it with sections of my health bar, which is funny because losing health is also satisfying in this game. It's really weird. I know it's odd for me to say something like that, but the way the health bar is animated when Bayek loses HP is extremely cool looking. It's hard to describe, but I really loved it. The parkour is responsive and easy to use. I didn't test whether you can diagonal climb like in Unity and Syndicate, but that's because I'm not the kind of player who intentionally uses that type of climb. I'm a very up and down, left and right kind of guy. Seeing as it's running in Unity's engine though, I'd make a reasonable wager that diagonal climbs are still in if a player deliberately calls upon them with their controls. I didn't remember to test if catch ledge was a thing, but it also didn't feel as crucial to me in Origins as it felt in Unity, Syndicate, and the previous games. There's something about the way most of the world is laid out and set up, which both telegraphs whether something will be a mistake for the observant players, and which means those mistakes are generally not too costly unless you've fallen off a tall building in the middle of a group of enemies. That can be trouble. Someone on the Ubisoft forum, 6keys though, they do say that catch ledge is a thing, if I'm interpreting their comments correctly. Anyway, the way Bayek moves is also really interesting, because the Assassin Brotherhood is not yet a formal entity, the Assassin's Creed does not yet exist. Because the Assassin's Creed does not yet exist, the formal techniques of social stealth and blending with one's surroundings have not yet been developed. And because social stealth has not yet been developed and is therefore not a tool that Bayek can use yet, there is no more profile system. And because there is no more profile system, movement works on the left stick alone. So tilting will move Bayek slowly, walking and jogging, and pushing it all the way will move Bayek quickly, sprinting. But this is where it gets cool. Pushing the stick all the way does not immediately make Bayek shoot off into a full sprint. Instead, he starts at a jog for a very short time, then a faster jog, then builds up to his full sprint speed. It's an increase in speed and momentum. Every time you hold your movement controls in a direction, he will have to accelerate, and it's awesome. The momentum does not affect jump distance, as far as I know, but I reason that they probably implemented movement speed this way so that we're not always overshooting doorways and openings we want to move through by immediately rocketing off in a full-out dash as soon as we touch the stick. I like this, felt good to play with. Have you guys heard how great the combat is, by the way? Rumor has it that the Origins team really wants players to invest in the combat and enjoy themselves with it, and they're going to get what they want. Combat was very nice and satisfying to use. This was an extremely old, obsolete build of the game that I was given to play, and it still felt pretty good. I knew in the back of my mind, rationally, that there was animation choppiness or whatever, but in the heat of the moment when I'm trying to survive the onslaught of a huge Spartan looking dude with a shield and a massive sword, I didn't really care. Like, you just want to play and stay alive. It plays extremely similarly to Dark Souls and Bloodborne, but in Assassin's Creed's world, obviously. The lock-on is very good. In the build I played, it was a white lock dot, just like in Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3, and I enjoyed it a lot. I wish they hadn't changed the graphic for it to a rotating crosshair in the more recent builds of the game, but I guess they had to do that to make it more obvious which enemy a player is targeting, even though it was pretty obvious to me. Flicking the lock dot between different enemies by flicking the right stick in their direction was extremely fast, extremely responsive, and it felt very natural. I had zero issues adapting to pretty much any of the controls. I just don't play anything on Xbox, so the placement of the stick and D-pad weirded me the fuck out, but that was the only bit of control discomfort I had. Everything else was flawless. Quite a few of the enemies I fought had shields, and light attacks will bounce off of them. You can guard break them with some heavy attacks to open them up to incoming damage, and you can also dodge behind them in the direction of their weapon hand to, lead into some reliable combo damage. Combat against multiple enemies felt intimidating, and the adrenaline gauge is Bayek's comeback mechanic. I used it when a commander was about to kill me, lunging into him and deleting like 75% of his HP after generating adrenaline on his followers. So after that, I dodged backwards away from him and switched to my bow to pepper him with arrows until he died. And I found that I was actually sweating, but not out of frustration or irritation like in Unity, rather it's because combat felt genuinely challenging without feeling unfair. I could say that about the whole experience, actually. Whenever I was detected, it truly felt like it was my fault, and not the game bullshitting me out of a successful stealth plan. That's the game's biggest difference in overall feel from previous ACs. In previous games, I make a plan, I go to execute it, the mechanics break down on me for whatever reason, and I'm exposed and have to fight or run. In Origins, I make a plan, I go to execute it. At every single step of my plan, every step in the process, the game is giving me transparency. It's telling me how much HP my actions will remove. It's allowing me to set up a matrix of safety by marking as many guards as I can and avoiding their sight lines. And I feel like a badass who actually managed to create and pull off an effective strategy in seconds. Origins allows you to play with immense intention, something the previous games felt like they lacked. If I was seen, it's because I wasn't diligent enough during scouting phase, the times during gameplay where I'm aiming my bow with Bayek to mark guards or flying around with Sano to do the same. Sano is fun to use and easy to control. You use your bow aim trigger to aim your bow, and you use the same trigger to aim with Sano to zoom in and go into the stationary first-person mode. The controls feel tailored to this game, and I found them to be such a natural fit that I didn't remember to check for legacy controls anywhere. What really shocked me was that within maybe a minute of picking up the game, never having played it before, I was already infiltrating a restricted area and stabbing fools left and right. There was basically zero adaptation time. I had instant comprehension of the controls as soon as I had the game in my hands. Of all the things that impressed me about Origins, that's probably the second biggest one. The first biggest one might be that the clever and dastardly things I tried to do actually worked. More on that later. Sano has a few other functions besides just scouting for enemies. If you go into your inventory and hover over your hidden blade, it will show you the materials and amount of them that you need in order to upgrade it to the next blade level. I was able to pin this crafting recipe to the underside of my XP bar in the top right of my HUD, and scouting around the map with Sano, my eagle showed me which animals and enemies carried which materials. It became very easy to deliberately target upgrading the hidden blade, or indeed any other crafting recipe you might want to pursue, like your stabilizer glove for extra range damage or whatever else. I didn't upgrade my hidden blade during the demo because there would have been no time to do anything else, but it's cool and encouraging that the way a player would go about it is quite, like, I don't know how to put it. Like, easy seems like a negative thing to say about it, but no, it's not. It's really positive. It's really fantastic that it's easy to know what you need and where to get it. And then the challenge comes from not being lost and bashing your head against a wall for hours trying to figure out like where to get this stuff. The challenge comes from, okay, it's being guarded by these enemies, or it's dropped from these animals that are really vicious and difficult to fight. So the challenge comes in the acquisition of the materials, not the discovery of them, which is really cool. The other interesting thing I noticed about crafting was my Bayek had at least a little bit of every crafting material except one, the golden glowing one in the bottom right called silica. When I hovered over it, its description was something along the lines of a mysterious mineral found deep underground and in tombs. An eerie feeling emanates from it. Now, I don't know what you think about this, but to me, I suspect it's a crafting material related to the Isu, those who came before, the first civilization, so perhaps certain legendary items require the use of this enigmatic mineral. We'll see what it ends up being in the final game, but it's got me pretty excited. The two tools that I was able to test in the demo were sleep darts and flesh decay. Sleep darts are like Black Flag sleep darts. They will temporarily sleep an enemy with the snoozing icon over their head, which will begin to empty very fast. I give it maybe 20 seconds before a sleep darted guard wakes up again, unlike Black Flag where you had like almost a minute leeway. In this game, they will wake up very fast. You can assassinate sleeping guards or sneak past them, and you can also sleep dart in combat. That was pretty cool. Sleep darts are used the same way bows are. You equip them by holding left D-pad, because they go in your third range slot, your tool slot, and their crosshair is a single white dot in the middle of the screen. You have to aim and throw them manually, because there are no more quick shots in this game for anything. When a guard detected me and began to smash my face in, I wondered what sleep darts would do when I threw one at him, and he instantly fell asleep while still standing, and before he collapsed unconscious to the ground, I was able to sprint up to him and tap out an assassinate button prompt, which reappeared over his head, which was cool. Sleeping guards on the ground are also able to be stabbed, mind you, both affected by a sleep dart and sleeping naturally as part of their schedule, as I mentioned before. So this tool is best used for ghosting or very deliberate pacifist play. You don't sleep dart a guard and stick around for ages. You sleep dart a guard and very quickly finish what you need to do, and then you get out of there. I was also able to unlock Flesh Decay with the single ability point they gave me, which is something we haven't seen anyone else talk about as far as I'm aware. Flesh Decay works by letting you poison a corpse. Once flesh decayed, the corpse will begin to release these disgusting looking blue fumes into the air. Bayek is able to carry this corpse and plop it down somewhere else entirely without the poison effect being interrupted or disappearing, which means we're able to weaponize the bodies of our dead enemies against other guards who would never have stumbled onto that corpse by themselves. What I ended up doing was I hit and bladed one guard, poisoned his body, picked it up, hid it in a pretty wide field of tall grass, and then I whistled to another guard and stealthily moved away from the area. When the guard that I lured went to investigate the whistle, he saw the body, he got poisoned from the flesh decay, and conveniently died inside of the tall grass, pretty much effectively hiding himself for me. It was pretty cool and felt very Dishonored-y in that sense of, can I do this? Will the game let me do this? Would this be possible? And it was possible. I don't know if flesh decay would spread from guard to guard normally, because the guard that got poisoned was the final enemy alive in the area, and there was nobody left after I'd stabbed everyone else. Sorry guys. Viewpoints are now primarily used for fast travel, and there are around 60 of them, but this is not an exact number, it's just a decent guess by one of the devs. Viewpoints are also used to increase Senu's perception radius. The way it works is, at the beginning of the game, the distance away from herself that Senu can mark objects and enemies is pretty decent, but it's not as big as it could be. Each viewpoint you sync widens this radius a little, until near the end of the game, when you sync with all the viewpoints, she'll be able to mark stuff from very far away, making stealth and exploration a little bit easier with every viewpoint you complete. Very cool stuff. We've been told that we're able to fast travel directly from Senu by looking at a viewpoint with her and pressing a button, but I didn't test that myself. I just fast traveled to a viewpoint from the world map. The location completion system is pretty much the same as Black Flag's, but it's now tied to distinct places and restricted areas like barracks, armories, silos, and storage buildings, instead of being linked to, wider locations like this island or this city, Havana, Nassau. It's not like that. It's like specific small areas within the world are, denoted as, okay, this is a location with gameplay objectives, and you can go in and 100% that location. And some of the objectives are things like assassinate the commander and the captain, loot treasures 0 out of 3, and stuff like that. As soon as I completed my first location, the Leo K struck. Like, a great hunger rose in me that basically said, I want to do this 99 more times, and I want to do it right now. I completed 2 more locations as well, just because it was so fun. And usually they involve stealth, so good stuff for me. If you're the type of person who enjoys 100%ing these games, location completion is going to be something you enjoy a lot. Strategy, adaptation, and improvisation were things that the game seemed to encourage. Like, we can still do bootleg double kills, like get behind one guard while aiming your bow at another guard, and headshot the far one, then very quickly stab the one close to you. Yeah, we can do that, which is nice for stealth videos and general gameplay, and it's fun to use. I actually used that to double kill 2 guards who were sleeping on some bedrolls side by side in a tent at night, so it even works on sleeping enemies. Tall grass is really interesting. It's interesting because it's not laid out in a gamey manner that feels like, oh, this is obviously set up to allow me to play this way. It's natural, and it's almost like the aesthetics and the plausibility of the world come before the gameplay, which is how Metal Gear Solid 5 was designed. Like, locations in MGS5 are just realistic. They are how they are. And then if you're clever enough, you can use that against your enemies. Origins feels exactly the same, and it's awesome. It's natural. It's almost like the aesthetics and plausibility of everything. Like I said, it comes before feeling gamey. This is something I really loved because it made me feel clever to use that tall grass in creative ways, luring guards into it, moving quietly inside it, and all that. It felt like I did this. This was my idea, not the developers. And although I know at the end of the day the devs do design for gameplay, and a dev's entire job is making the player feel like everything was their idea when it really wasn't, it still felt that way. They succeeded at that objective, at that development goal. They succeeded at that. And it felt like all of my strategies were my own, and that is a wonderful feeling that AC didn't really used to give me so much. I was not able to get and test out Chain Assassinate, sorry Treviso, because it had 3 prerequisite skills that I would have had to play for an entire day just to acquire. And there was no way that was going to happen in the demo because it didn't have enough content in it to get me that level of XP. Finally, I heard Bayek say fuck in Egyptian, which was awesome. I think it was something like neck, right? Like as he found out some very dark plot twist. And yeah, I really enjoyed playing this game. It was wonderful, and I don't know how I'm gonna wait for 2 months without going nuts and getting hype all the time. I did have a chat with the dev that was there. I talked with the dev that was on location. He had a lot of responsibility during development for the tweaking and adjusting of vehicles in the game, like horses, camels, chariots. And in the beginning of development on vehicles, apparently they felt and controlled very authentically to how they would, but playtests revealed that players didn't respond well to that, so there was a lot of tweaking done to make them more controllable and responsive, while still retaining a bit of the unique touches of using the various types of mounts. Chariots were originally one entity as well, like they were one game object, but now the horses and the chariots are all distinct entities that are linked together, and physics act on them and like pull them around and stuff. It's really cool. He also mentioned that if you kill one of the horses on a chariot, you can steal the surviving horse, effectively converting a chariot into a horse, and that's really cool. And one of the more encouraging things he told me was that, and this is something I suspected for a very long time, and it's good to hear that this is actually the case, but it's very cringeworthy to see people critiquing aspects of the game on forums that have been fixed long ago. His quote went something like, this is fixed. I know this is fixed. It was fixed months ago, but we're not allowed to show you. And the reason for that is Ubisoft marketing has to approve every build used for demonstration purposes before they will let the devs show it to the public. but the dev I spoke to seemed very confident that a lot of the stuff has been fixed. He didn't seem worried or concerned about anything really, and he gave off a very calming and solid atmosphere. He's excited for the game to come out, and he basically said, people are going to love it, people might hate it, but we've made a really good game, and the people we made it for are going to have a great time. Now, I had a fucking excellent time. So I can't help but feel emotionally like I'm one of the people that this game was made for. And considering who I am and my level of engagement with the franchise, I think it's safe to say Ashraf's team knows what they're doing and which parts of the player base they're prioritizing with regards to this game. So thank you all very much for watching, and stay sneaky. I also asked about present day, but of course he was unable to tell me anything. If he didn't want to be executed for video game treason or lose his job. He did seem very excited though, for what it's worth, and the vibe I got from him was that he really wanted to talk about it. He seemed really excited. Take that as you will. I see that as a good sign. I'm very happy with it. And yeah, I will see you guys next time. I wish I could have taken home some of the... I don't know. I just wish I could play it again because it was really enjoyable, and I'm very excited to see what kind of cool stuff I can do when the game finally releases. Once again, thank you all for watching, and this time for real, stay sneaky.